Well, welcome everybody. This is your boy Dre, along with my main man Wood, and this is the first episode of the Woodbury Word uh, visual podcast. With so much going on in the world, we were trying to figure out a way to connect with all of our loyal supporters, and wanted to see if video would be a means that we could connect with you. And so we're giving this a shot. So this will be better episode 2, 3, 10, 15, 20. Please bear with us as we try to iron out some of these kinks and these wrinkles. But so glad to be joining you again. For those of you who do know, we do host the Woodbury Word podcast that you can find on all of your podcasting platforms. We will continue to do that, actually in conjunction with this visual show. But again, we wanted to do something a little different. Man, we haven't seen each other in
it's been weeks, like 3-4 weeks, right?
yeah, man. So we're just trying to connect and try to keep this thing moving. And we
That's
do understand that this is a new frontier, right? So how will all of our companies, whatever your company is, how will you adjust to this kind of new normal, whether it's a temporary normal or the normal going forward? And so we're giving our shot here in the content space. And so glad to have everybody joining us. Please send the word out. You can catch us at Woodbury Collection on Instagram, our Facebook page, Woodbury Collection, this YouTube channel, Woodbury Collection, and of course the podcast, Woodbury Word Podcast. You can get on iTunes, you can get it on um, Spotify, you can get on Anchor, everywhere you get podcasts. That's where we are. So, Wood, what's up, man? How you been?
Man, we try, as you just said, adjusting to what is becoming our new normal. I think the curtain's been pulled back on a lot of industries who proclaimed that if you didn't have the means to get in, if you couldn't show up, then you couldn't produce for us. And I think that's changing rapidly. We're going to see a huge wave of sort of rearrangement in a lot of industries, I think, as it pertains to where and how you can work. I think what happens is your ability to produce now becomes a premium. Uh, if you can get the job done, it's already been shown that it can be done. They can meet you where you are, so to speak. So yeah, that's interesting. That being said, it's been a little different for me because I'm still going into the office. So I see my wife working from home. I see my son attending school in a bridged version of school from home. But I'm still going into the office. So what I've enjoyed is no traffic in the morning. That's been excellent.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
But remembering why I'm going in, I am what they consider a first responder. I work in the oncology space. Those are patients who are already immunocompromised. So when pandemics, viruses, uh, epidemics are going around, they are the first to have to be super cautious. So it's it's required a good bit of vigilance on our part. You know, those of us that are working there, commitment, vigilance. It's required uh, some self health practices just to stay right in mind and body to be able to serve and service and to be uh, on point for them. They are. It's a time where lots of folks are fearful, uh, and we can argue about whether the fear is warranted, and depending on the source of the fear. Um, but you can't argue with the fact that a virus is something that, if not taken seriously, can cause irreparable damage and ultimately death for those who are not at optimal health. And
Right.
a lot of us are not at optimal health, and it's not always just because of our. While these things do play a huge part, it's not always because of what we eat, how we eat, if we do or do not exercise, if we don't get the proper amount of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients in our body. Always best to come from food sources, of course, but even in other sources of those things that keep us healthy and keep our immune systems strong. But at the end of the day, I hate that phrase, but at the end of the day, there's so much going on in our dailies, which is probably another podcast, that
No doubt.
sometimes the 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 coming together of your lifestyle, where you work, how you work, and your living conditions don't create the most optimal space for you to be at peak health. And that's what we have to realize when they say things like we need to stay home for the masses. Could it be from a point of fear? Could there be ulterior motives? Financially, socially. I'm not going to discount any of that,
Right.
but we have to understand that at the end of the day, uh, basic right of life, the right to life, is in the balance.
Yeah.
And I have the right to live just as the next person has the right to live, and I have the right to not have to worry about me doing my daily task infringing on my right to live.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you, man. A couple of things really stand out to me. Number one, my relationship with um, higher power. I believe it's God has grown tremendously, and it's grown from simplicity and just being grateful to be alive, healthy. My family's healthy. My family's good. I have older family members who I, really worry about, who cannot afford to get this virus, right?
Yeah.
And so to be able to just FaceTime them and put my eyes on them, I'm like, ooh, thank God, right?
Yeah.
Um, got a daughter, she's 3, she's healthy. My wife, I'm not quote unquote essential, but my business is, my job is, and so still working. Thank God. We have food. Thank God. All of those things that you're just like, man, I took for granted being able to go to the grocery store,
Yep.
being able to put gas in the car, all of this stuff I took for granted. So that gratitude part really sticks out, knowing that it's nothing that I'm doing. Um, it's really, I believe the hand of God that's keeping us. Second thing is how fragile life is.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, people were healthy, relatively healthy,
Yeah.
and now they're gone. Um, and it doesn't discriminate age, race, how much money you make, all of those things. So it's like, wow, this is really serious. And I was saying to my wife, 9/11 was instantaneous. It was
Yep.
a moment that we'll never forget, but it was a moment. It wasn't an extended amount of time where you didn't know where the end was going to be. So you remember the day, you remember the moments, you remember where you were. But I don't think any of us are going to say, I remember where I was during the pandemic. I mean, other than your house.
Right.
But just the length of this thing has just
That's
been
right.
eye-opening. Life changed just like that.
Just like that.
So that's been eye-opening. And then the third thing has been how, because life has changed, work has changed. The very nature of how you provide has changed.
Yep.
We wouldn't be doing this episode or this show this way had it not been for the pandemic, because we would meet up, record podcasts, have meetings and stuff like that. So it's caused us to have to change how we even do things.
Yep.
The people who will be making money moving forward will change. The skill sets that are necessary will change. And so, that's been something in my mind, like, yo, maybe I need to be spending this time picking up some new skills.
Yeah.
Picking up new skill sets. And so I'm looking at that, like, what can I do differently? And then finally, I thought that this would be something that the country could come together about. put politics aside, who hates Trump, who loves Trump, all that kind of stuff. And somehow this still became political. And that has been disappointing. It's still along those lines, man. And I just wonder if this won't create unity, I don't know what will.
What will? Yeah.
And so, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I fear we are there as a country, where it's the things that separate us now are, I mean, it boils down to basic needs. I mean, the basic right to earn a living wage versus the right to, I guess, ownership and not having any outside entity interfere with what you've built as an individual. Right. Those are two separate positions on separate ends of the spectrum, but it boils down to basic rights to sort of live and exist. And we are so far apart when it comes to that basic right. So I just see it spilling over into everything. Two things that really come to mind, though. I mean, we'd be remiss if we did not shine a spotlight on what underserved communities are dealing with, how their quarantine experience differs from other experiences. Yeah. And the other, which I'll touch on first, is was on a call with a guy smarter than myself and another health professional, and he was quick to point out that we've got the nomenclature wrong, which oftentimes we do, and it means so much. We should be physically distancing, and we should be coming together socially during this time. It's not that we're socially distancing, because right now, more than ever, because of the need to be physically apart from folks until we can get to next steps in this process, we now more than ever need to be socially connected to one another.
Interesting.
So I think we really have to take heed and focus on what are the things that I can do daily to sort of feed the need for social and communal connection. I think we're separated, and we're probably spending way more time with our family than we have in some time. So we may see that as we may see that as our communing.
Oh yeah.
But there still needs to be a sense of social community, social involvement, even from where we are, even if it's just laying the groundwork for when things pivot back into the direction of sort of normalcy of movement, that then we can start to work on these things together, because we've been building on them as a social unit, but not losing sight of the fact that we've got to stay socially connected during this. And it's the physical distancing that is needed right now until the next phase of the pandemic arises.
So quick question about that. Is that to help with mental stress and some of those emotional issues that could come from not having that ability to socialize?
Absolutely. Because if you speak to or know of or have ever experienced sort of depression and social withdrawal, that's exactly what happens. Yeah, you tend to go in, turn in, not reach out,
right,
and it compounds from there. The lack of perspective, you lose perspective essentially, and then some of the things, the negative thoughts and the negative ideas begin to take hold, because you lose sight of what real perspective is. That's not to say that the feelings of depression and the feelings of loneliness and isolation are not real. They are absolutely real. But oftentimes in that space, you can lose sight of the reality that there are folks in your sphere that are there for you, that are willing to sort of assist you in transitioning out of a space of, I can't move, I feel the weight of the world, I can't go further, so I'll just sit here. And it's so much easier to get in that space when you are socially and physically distanced. So being reminded that while we are physically distanced, we do really need to be intentional about our social interaction as best we can. Um, Go
Yeah, that
ahead.
makes a lot of sense, man. I didn't think about it from that perspective. I know for me, it's been a little, hasn't been as hard because we FaceTime with family pretty much daily, if not every other day. And so that's made it not so bad, but not being able to physically see them, hug them, kiss
Yeah,
them, that kind of
yeah.
thing has been tough. But I know you're actually seeing patients and seeing people. What is the vibe that people are coming to you with? Or is it a feeling of, man, we're never going to get out of this thing? Is it a fear of, hey, this is temporary and, let's just power through it and we'll be better on the other side? What's the kind of sense that you're getting from people out there?
It's a lot of unknown. That's the prevailing sort of sentiment is where do we go and how long does this last? Um, Most of the patients that we see are, they've been face to face with, with hard hitting news and diagnoses. So they're not uh, sort of strangers to adversity and and things happening that sort of turns their world upside down, literally. So from them, it's a lot less of the where do we go from here, and a lot more of the I wonder how long this is going to last. However, I am grateful that I am able to continue fighting this fight.
Yeah.
I'm able to come. That you guys are here and you are able to provide services for us, and we're just grateful and thankful for that. So we
It's like
get a lot of that.
it's almost like they're callous, like they've been through some wars before. And I hate to use the term wars for people who actually in them, but they've been through some tough times. So they're kind of conditioned to handle and survive. And so for others who haven't been through these types of situations, they don't know how to handle it. And neither one of them is bad or good or anything like that. But
Right.
you just when you have history to kind of rely upon
Yeah.
and lean on, and okay, we've survived before, we made it
Yeah.
through. Here's what we need to do. So,
Yeah. In
um,
recent history, for a lot of them, it's their adversity is recent, and they're still in the midst of it. Some of them, but they're seeing the end, or they're seeing progress. Seeing progress being made. So they're able to sort of use that perspective and transfer it onto our present state. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that our underserved communities, namely communities of color, we get a bad rap during these times for various reasons. Whether it's that we're doing our own thing, or um, we're not taking advantage of what's being offered to us. Uh, Oftentimes, again, we are the victim is blamed.
right,
I think about when the mandate comes down to physically distance and what that means for the family that has two or three properties, the family that has one property that's expansive, that they could not only could they socially distance and physically distance in the property, but they could bring in uh, family members and distant friends who need a space to come that's safe and secluded, and
right,
they could all be in that space and socially distance, as opposed to those that are uh, underserved or in low financial uh, with lower financial and physical abilities. And you talk about the numbers of people in a certain square footage. You talk about there not being any space to walk out of the front door and get a change of scenery, get some fresh air, and not be able to distance.
right.
And what that does for the psyche, number one, and what that does for your health during a time like this. Um, Granted, we should not be throwing parties. We should not be having a kickback right now. But oftentimes, real life looks like that
Yeah.
for some populations. Real life looks like it's 8 to 10 people in the crib.
Yeah.
And now you're saying that none of us can go to work, or one or two of us can go to work, and the one or two that are going are deemed essential, so they are the front line to your major corporations who the the upper echelon employees are not working.
They're at home.
But your frontline folks are definitely there,
Yeah.
putting themselves in harm's way. And then they're coming back to a space where it may be, 6 to 8 folks in a living quarter,
Mm-hmm.
who haven't had the time to get out and get some healthy movement, some healthy activity. So then we blame the victim again for, see, it's on you. You can't. This is why your health is bad. This is why we know about food deserts.
Right.
We know about housing discrimination. And now you expect us to be able to quarantine your boy Jerry Jones. The wife and I were watching the draft the other night, and she makes the comment, "That's an interesting looking couch that Jerry's on. Like, just something about the room." We find out later he's out on the yacht. Like, he's calling his shots for the draft from his yacht.
Yeah.
Like, because that's what he can do.
Right.
Like, and if you can't do that, then you've got to deal with and sort of exist in what you have and where you are. And so
Exactly.
oftentimes we're penalized and villainized for not doing things the way that others think we should, where really we're just doing things with what we have.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. And that even doesn't see, even when they talk about those communities, they always make it seem like it's of one race or one shade of color. There's other races that have that same issue, that same challenge,
Right.
economically, family structure dynamics, all of those things. So again, I'm hoping that people can see the similarities in their experience and start saying, okay, wait a minute. One group is saying we can't trust the media, which I don't think we can. Another group is saying we can't trust the administration, which I don't think we can. But everybody's saying we can't trust. So why not come together,
Right. Right.
and realize that all of these brands, all of these institutions profit and benefit, whether monetarily or by your votes, from your fear and your trepidation and your concern and your worry. I'm not saying we shouldn't take precautions, because God knows we are. But at a certain point, it's like, yo, turn the news off. Like,
Yeah.
turn social media off, get to a good headspace, walk, run, read a book, just be alone with your thoughts, pray, whatever it is, do those things, because on one hand, you're saying you can't trust anybody, but you keep going to them.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So um, that's just one of the things that kind of sticks out amongst the others that I mentioned earlier. But just to wrap it up, we want everybody to realize that, and Wood and I had this discussion, things are changing, things have changed. They're going to continue to evolve and change. As you all know, we primarily are a men's lifestyle brand, um, primarily focusing on clothing, made to measure clothing, footwear, accessories, etc. But in this change, it causes us to have to change how we do our business. Um, we're looking at real life right now. And when real life is in front of you, you might not be as concerned about three-piece clean pad, suit, because a family member is in the hospital. We're trying to keep all of those things into perspective. So we're going to be coming to you realizing that it's real out there. It really is. And life is happening. But we also want to continue to talk about the things that we know well, which is style. So you're going to probably hear a new tagline, right? Real lifestyle. Thinking about those things. thinking about first responders, thinking about how do I self quarantine, how do I social or physical distance, thinking about life, the loved ones that we're concerned about, thinking about style. Yeah, you might still be working. What are you wearing on your Zoom meetings and all that kind
Right.
of stuff?
Right.
And then when you come out of this, making the right purchases because you may not have to have the same amount of events, but you need to be presentable and um, intentional with what you do wear to those events. So style still plays a part, will always play a part. But we just want to be here as a source to provide some information. A lot of it's just opinion and thought, but we do have some experience in what we're talking about, and we source of entertainment as well. So we're gonna head out. Any last things that you want to say?
No, I think I'm good. I think I want to leave folks with the idea, the thought that oftentimes we get bogged down in it's constantly the machine against me and what I'm trying to do, and oftentimes it's just as simple as what you want and what the machine wants, whether you see it as the government or big business, or they just don't align. It's really not even personal. It's
Right.
just what they are out to do, their aim and their goal is just not what your aim or your goals are. Understanding that, you take the personal assault out of it,
Right.
and then you can begin to maneuver. If your outcomes don't match my outcomes, why would you be fighting for me? We understand that the government is supposed to do that, but I want to leave folks with the idea that let's start with each other. Let's start inside with what higher power guides you, whether that's you or your higher power, and let's begin to look at what can I do for me, for my family, for my community, and what can we do collectively uh, to really make the best of a situation that is almost out of control, almost out of our control.
No doubt about that.
So let's focus on the things that we can control as a collective,
That's
and
right.
and move forward. Yeah, we're still here though. We're still coming as stylish as ever. Uh, as Dre said, we've got a lot more lifestyle uh, aspects that we really want to bring to the table for you guys, and hopefully you'll begin to see some of that soon.
Well, we appreciate you tuning in. This is our first one. Hopefully, we'll get some more of those kinks out as we move forward. But we appreciate your time. Thanks for rocking with us. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Peace.
Peace.